The big story in 2022, the red wave, the tsunami, the overwhelming attack upon the insanity that has been levied by Democrats in this country as a part of the Joe Biden administration. And we've been looking sort of Sherlock Holmesian for clues in all these primaries that are going on, Buck. And I want to hit you with some data here. Texas 34 congressional district has been a Democrat-controlled congressional district for over 100 years. It went for Hillary Clinton by 22 points in 2016. In 2020, it had swung back down to Biden only winning by 4 over Trump, but the Democrat congressman won by 14. It is 84% Hispanic. Buck, we got a major sign that we're not talking about just a red wave, but maybe a red tsunami. Mayra Flores won by roughly 7 points. That means in the space of 2 years, a little bit less, 18 months, we have had a 21-point swing in Texas 34. Wow. I mean, if this were a representative sample of where we might be going, we're talking about seats that nobody even considered being in play. Maybe the biggest red wave of all time, potentially on the horizon.
So there's so much about this particular win as well. It's obviously a special election, so there's going to have to be another. So we're going to see how durable this movement in this one congressional district is in just a matter of months, right? We're going to be finding out who is going to have 2 years in the seat at the end of this year. But I think it's fascinating that you've got, with Mayra Flores, the wife of a Border Patrol agent, I believe the first, and correct me if any of these first.
I think all this is right.
The first ever Mexican-born member of the United States Congress, born in Mexico, became a U.S. citizen, brought here when she was a child. I think she may also be the first ever female Latina, certainly Republican, but maybe female Latina member of Congress, period, from the state of Texas. And as I said, married to a Border Patrol agent. And Clay, when you see some of what she said, and now she had some solid support, at the national level from the Trump folks, from the Make America Great crowd. But she said things when she was running for this seat like the Rio Grande Valley. I know some people say Rio Grande. Which way?
I say Rio Grande. I don't know.
That's the American way, right? So it's Rio Grande.
I'm not great with accents, as everybody knows who listens to this show. So I'm going to sound the most American possible.
Shouldn't we say River Grande if we're going to? If it's either Rio Grande or River Grande, right? It should anyway. But I'll say Rio Grande. I'm going to go Clay style here, and it is. She said it is, quote. This is from her. Remember, female Latina, born in Mexico. Now U.S. citizen, member of Congress, and big congratulations to Mayra Flores for her defeat of Dan Sanchez. She says the Rio Grande Valley is under attack at the border and promised not to let cronyism in Washington ruin our communities. So there are two things I think that are simultaneously that are really interesting to watch play out. On the one hand, you have, as we've already discussed, the Hispanic community in America moving far toward the Republican Party, and that's just because rational, because the economy, because inflation, because gas prices, and we're saying great, fantastic. This is a great movement, great momentum. But in this case specifically, this is somebody who is saying what the Biden administration's border policies are doing to our community is lawless and reckless and unfair. We are overrun with drug cartel activity. We are overrun with illegal caravans coming through this area. If you look, it's right along the southeastern corridor of Texas and the Mexican border. And she's just saying when Republicans usually say, that's so racist. You're not allowed to say that. She's saying, no, illegal immigration's a big problem. This needs to stop.
And I think what it also brings home is this is a monster swing that has happened really rapidly. And I don't know Remember, Buck, earlier this week we were talking about, hey, how are people in New York City going to wake up the morning after the midterms and react? They have no idea how the rest of the country feels. New York, L.A., and I know we got a lot of listeners in both markets, and you guys are behind enemy lines, so to speak, but you're more connected to the middle part of the country. And Democrats have gone so far left wing. Elon Musk tweeted. I don't know if you saw this, Buck, but I thought it was interesting because Elon, it seems to me, is following a little bit of the pathway that I followed. He said, I voted for Mayra Flores. First time I ever voted Republican. Massive red wave in 2022. That is what Elon Musk said. He, by the way, certainly has moved much of his businesses to Texas. And Latinos, first of all, they reject all this ridiculous Latinx talk and all this ridiculous woke discussion, but they tend to have normal family values, by which I mean they understand that a home with a man and a woman raising a child is far more successful. They tend to have religious faith backgrounds. The family structure is very sound. And they're looking around and saying, wait a minute, you're telling me that a 5-year-old can change their gender? The Democrats are so out of touch. And I think this is emblematic. I would encourage Republicans to lean into this because I think it's emblematic not just for the Latino population, the Hispanic population, but for Asians, for black, white. Look, people come to America because they believe this country is incredible, because they are leaving behind places that are much worse. And the idea that they're coming to a country that Democrats think is awful and racist and the worst place in the world to live, which is really the Democrat underlying message right now, is fundamentally rejected by many of these people. And so this is a shot across the bow for Democrats. I don't think they're going to respond to it. I don't think they're going to understand it. And I think it's symptomatic of what we're going to see in less than 5 months in the red wave.
And to your point about the echo chambers in the very blue areas of the country and how they're setting themselves up. If everyone listening to this is like, how could they be surprised? Oh, they're going to be surprised by what's coming. The same way that, Donald Trump, he couldn't have won. It must have been Russia, right? They're setting themselves up for a shock here. And I think one way that you can just line this up and see what the message is from the country versus what the blue Democrat enclaves are going with, while we're seeing this enormous special election win because of what it indicates. We know it's one congressional seat, but a lot of firsts, as we said, which the Democrat media is not going to talk about.
This was not anticipated, Buck. She had to win over 50%. We should also mention that they're redrawing this district, so it'll actually get more difficult for her when the new district goes into effect. But she could still potentially win it again. The statement that she made is a monstrously massive one.
And while that's going on, instead of looking at because the Biden administration, the Biden White House, will not, in their minds, betray the left-wing base by doing anything to crack down on illegal activity at the border. They just won't do it. They're trying to process it more. They're trying to hide it from the American people. So while this big statement, as you say, has come down about this special election, you see the DHS is a big report out of Fox News, and credit to, I believe, Bill Malugin broke it for Fox. DHS is going to be disciplining agents involved in the, quote, migrant whipping fiasco, which was already investigated, did not happen, meaning no one was whipped. They didn't try to whip anybody. It was split reins on horseback. And now just to give something, just to play racial politics, just to play the left-wing blame game here and to throw members of law enforcement, which is what Border Patrol are, under the bus, they're going to give them some administrative punishment in the next few days. After they were cleared criminally in the investigation, now they're going to just punish them so they can say, see, we throw Border Patrol under the bus at the first sign of problems.
That's because the Democrats' entire campaign promise right now is essentially everything is racist. You question Karine Jean-Pierre and how bad of a job she's doing as a spokesperson, it's because she's black and gay. No. It's because she's bad at her job. The entire Biden administration is bad at their job, and Democrats, their only game plan is to immediately label anything that criticizes the decisions that they're making as racist, sexist, transphobic, whatever that might be. And it's going to be very difficult to make that argument. I mean, which is why I'm so fascinated to think, what are all these people waking up in New York and L.A. on the day after the midterms going to say when minority voters continue to overwhelmingly move towards the right side? Are they going to be like Larry Elder, the black face of white supremacy, or the Hispanic face of white supremacy, the Asian face of white supremacy? Or is there going to have to be a recognition of just how toxic the Democrat brand has become? And this is how I ended up a Republican, right? It wasn't that I moved. It's that the Democrats lost their mind, went insane, and I'm just desperately seeking sanity. And there's a lot of me's out there, guys and girls of all different backgrounds, who were saying, I've had enough.
And now the big question, I think, is will the trend that we see about Hispanic voters coming out in numbers for the Republican Party that are historic. I mean, you haven't – now this is just one little microcosm, but given the polling we see across the country and the realities of the economy, plus legal Hispanic voters – Democrats hate to talk about this, right? The same way that what Mayra Flores says about the lawless border, Mexican-born female Latina, now member of Congress, Mayra Flores, what she says about the border is racist when Republicans say it. It'll be interesting to see how Democrats try to console themselves if a lot of Hispanic voters who do not like, all the polling shows this too, being called Latinx.
Yeah, they actually despise it.
They think it's annoying and condescending.
And weird.
And they're right.
Yes.
But it'll be fascinating to see Democrats try to explain how that big move, along with, I'm sure a lot of the exit polling will show that illegal immigration, especially in Texas, Arizona, along the border, illegal immigration was a major concern for Hispanic voters in the midterm election. That will make it difficult for the left to explain that it's just all Donald Trump and racism.
Oh, and this would have happened, Buck, in 2020 but for COVID, right? We saw the early stirrings of this massive move from Asians, black voters, Hispanic voters in the direction of Republicans. And some people said, well, it's just Donald Trump. That was the argument they tried to make. He had a unique appeal in South Florida and South Texas. I think what you're seeing is it's not only Trump, it's the toxicity of Democrat ideas, and they were overwhelmingly repudiated last night. Lots of results in primary season, but to me, this is one that stands out that if I were in the DNC, if I was in that Biden White House, I'd be having trouble sleeping at night because of that tsunami. I don't even think we call it a wave anymore. I think it's a big red tsunami that's coming.